Okay, I'm Sharon, and thanks to Jane for loaning me her Brother My Star 3 for this demonstration. I'm going to be doing buttonholes, sewing buttons on, and decorative stitches and a few other things today. I am not going to be covering a blind hem. If you want to know how to do a blind hem on this machine, it is stitch number 4, and there is a video up there that will cover it. You may need an optional foot for it, not sure. Let's get started. To bring the bobbin thread up, I've got the needle up at the moment and I'm holding the needle thread. I go down and up and make sure I go all the way up to the top. And depending where you've got the thread here, it'll either come through or it won't. If it won't, you just need to release it so that your bobbin thread comes up to the top, because it can get stuck in there. And then you put the thread, both threads are under the foot and out to the back. On the right there is a 10, 20 and 30 mark. These are millimetres. If you want to do, with the needle in the middle, a 10 millimetre seam, you would go here, 20 mil you would go here, and 30 you would go here. 15 is actually what a lot of the companies want us to do. I'm on straight stitch. I'm going to set my stitch length to about 3, and off we go. I can hear the needle making some interesting noises. Before I fix that, I'm going to do a little bit of reversing just so you can see where the reverse is. So as I'm sewing, I depress this button and as long as I hold it down, the machine will go backwards. When I release it, it will go forwards. The harder I depress the foot control, the faster the machine will go. Make sure I have the needle in the up position with the take up lever at the top before I take the fabric out. I can use the cutter at the side. There's my stitching. There's the blue on the back. There is a little bit of the red coming through, but it's not very much, so I'm not going to worry about it. You may have noticed that the stitching was not going accurately back over the other stitching when it was going backwards. That's because the machine doesn't have very many feed dogs and doesn't have a lot of positions where it's holding onto the fabric. It's just a product of the kind of machine it is. I'm going to loosen the screw at the right and pull the needle out. I presume that that needle had a bit of a hook on the end of it, that it had been a bit damaged, because I could hear it picking at the fabric. So I've pushed it in as far as I can with the flat part of the needle to the back and tighten with the screwdriver. The groove runs down the front of the needle. I will happily put a Janome, a Brother, a Singer, a Benina, a Schmetz, an Organ, a Pfaff needle into any of my machines. I can do this in the knowledge that they are good quality needles. They have to be. None of the sewing machine brands can afford to have poor quality needles, because it doesn't matter how expensive your sewing machine is, a poor quality needle will make your sewing machine look like rubbish, and the machine companies can't afford to do that. So you can be sure that a regular needle from any of the brands will be a good one, but there are some question marks over the off-brand needles. Some of them are good, some of them are absolutely awful. Stitch number 3 is zigzag, so I'm going to wind this towards me to get to stitch number 3. I will set my zigzag to be as wide as possible. On the stitch width, I've just taken that up to 5, which is the middle control, and I'll leave stitch length on a bit over 3. For this row, I'm just going to run the edge of the foot down my last row of stitching. take the needle to the top and make sure the take-up lever is at the top, and then cut off. There's my zigzag. You can see that there is a bit of the red coming through on the back. That's really not a disaster. Zigzag is generally not used for stitching things together, it's used for finishing edges, and that's fine. If I take the stitch length at the top, the far right dial, down until it gets to F, I should get a satin stitch. Once again, I'll take the needle up to the top, take up lever at the top, lift the foot and take it out. If you're wanting to do a satin stitch, how close together those stitches need to be is dependent on how thick the thread is. So a finer thread, you have to get the stitches closer together. A thicker thread, you have to get them a bit further apart. Stitch number 10 is a scallop, and that will need that same F stitch length. And that's a nice little scallop. So in each case here, I'm making it as wide as I can so that I get as big of a scallop as I can, and I've got that stitch length set to F. To do a buttonhole, I need to come back here to stitch number 1. I'm not going to get quite there at the moment, I'm going to stop at 2. This is the buttonhole foot for the machine. You open it out, put your button in and close it. I'm going to change the feet on the machine, and to do that I pull the lever at the back towards me and the foot drops off, and then I need to get this little bar under the ankle, which is a down position where you're sewing and up position where you normally put your fabric in, and if you push hard you can make it go up an extra bit, which will make it a bit easier to get the buttonhole foot on. Now before I actually start a buttonhole, I'm going to do the needle down and up through some fabric, and the reason I do that is to get the thread under the foot. That's the only reason I do it. The button is in the back and there's a spring. So it wants to start at the front. The machine is going to go backwards. So we're going to want to line the foot up over wherever it is that you want the buttonhole to be. To start it, press that back. The machine did a very small bar tack at the front. When it runs into the piece at the back, it does the back bar tack and then comes forward. I want it to do a bit more of a bar tack at the front, so I'm going to push it again and let it do a little tiny bit more. And now it's finished. Lift the needle up, lift the foot and back. Now you can see one half of this buttonhole is much closer together than the other half. In my threading video, I showed you a place on the back of the machine to adjust for forward and back on stitches. And this is exactly the position where you make that adjustment. I was also unable to get Jane's machine to give me a good buttonhole size for the button that I put into the foot. This is something where you really need to do some practice ones before you do anything on a garment. Otherwise you may end up having to put a different size button on than what you wanted. If you go to do another buttonhole and the machine doesn't seem to want to start and do the right thing, go off the buttonhole stitch and back onto it again to let the machine know it's starting a new buttonhole. When I finish doing buttonholes, this gets pushed straight up. Pull the lever at the back towards you, lift the foot and off. This is the adapter so that you can do free motion things. So it covers the feed dogs. It just sits on here and gets pressed in. By using an optional foot that's called a darning foot, then you can do free motion quilting with these machines. Use a straight stitch and this cover over the feed dogs, and then you control where the fabric is going to go under the needle. This is also what you will use for sewing buttons on. With the foot on, the pattern onto 3, which is your zigzag. In times gone by, if you set your sewing machine to 4mm wide zigzag, that would work for most buttons. It's not quite so consistent now, so you do need to hand wind things to make sure you're not going to run into the button. The other thing I like to do is to sticky tape my button in place. It's an awful lot easier to do the getting the foot on the right part of the button if the button isn't wiggling around as you do it. I do have a video about sewing buttons on. I know this is going to be really hard to see. I am placing the holes in the button towards the back, and I'm going to just hand wind and make sure that the machine is not hitting the button. Once I've done that a couple of times, I know it's okay. You only need to probably do about 6 turns. Lift the foot and take it out. Take those threads through to the back and remove the sticky tape. The buttonhole is rather too small. There's no way I'm going to get that button through that buttonhole. I would suggest what you need to do is put a larger button into the foot in order to overcome that problem. I think it's incredibly valuable to have these videos on the older machines available for people to use on YouTube. Thanks to Jane for letting me use her machine. Check out the playlist on the Brother My Star 3 if you've got one, and I shall see you next time.